thank you so much for being a guest today with the Think Small podcast. Really looking forward to today's conversation. So our normal guest is based in the United States, right?
Yeah.
But you kind of snuck in there and you told me a good story on our pre-call, and I wanted to just talk a little bit more about how you came into the business and what you're doing out in the UK.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. Happy to do that, and privileged to be here.
Yeah. So tell me again. So recap. I mean, you're operating a cheese company in the UK, but you're artisan cheese, right?
Yeah, we're artisans. Yeah, that's right. Correct. We make small batches. We make in traditional methods. Very little mechanics involved. Very, very much based on hand touch, feel, skills that have been established over the last sort of 45 years. And yeah, we supply into the more niche, upper quality restaurants, delicatessens through independent wholesalers. So brutally independent, I suppose. Yeah, there seems to be a growing demand for what we do in the UK at the moment, and maybe that's being replicated in the States. There seem to be more artisan cheesemakers in the States as well, so that's a good thing, I think.
I think in general there's a large push to have a push away from big food, right? Big agro, healthier foods. Everyone is. When I'm in the grocery store, I constantly see people, and myself, I've been doing this for many years. Is like first thing you do, you grab a package off the shelf and I'm convenience nowadays. So I don't know if that's similar in the UK or if that's always been a case.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge. I think people are becoming more and more aware of, perhaps the damage of the diet that we've consumed over the last sort of 20 years or so. Ultra processed foods that are full of stuff that is not probably at harmony with our bodies. And there is a greater awareness. I think there's that, and also I think as well more on the ethical side as well. I think people are more conscious of where their food comes from, and I think people like us, and there are many more like us that can sort of be quite open and sort of demonstrate what happens when we start and how we source right through to the point at which they eat stuff. It's got to taste good first and foremost, but then if it's then got quite a nice story that goes with it that feels and aligns with people's values, then that's also good as well.
Yeah, I've actually always kind of noticed that as well. Like, my aunt owns 11 acres or so out in rural part of New Jersey, if you can find a rural part of New Jersey. But she owns I think 15 chickens, and
right,
she has fresh eggs every day, and I go over there. She'd hand me a dozen, and I go home, cook them up, and they always taste so much better than I can get them in the store. And it's like, I think there's a testament to freshness. Obviously, they're handpicked the week before, right? But then also quality of life thing.
Yeah, animal welfare and everything. And we've always got to be realistic. I think you've got to always give a caveat that people need to eat, and ultimately, food is good business as well. And often, innovation and growth and employs lots of people. So you can't just sort of switch the switch and say, you must always get eggs from your aunt or your friend or whoever that might be. But I think there's room in the world for both, and kind of it would be nice. Often industries are overly influenced by big corporations, whereas I think probably in the food world there's room for big businesses, corporates, to maybe be influenced more by the small guys, by the people who are kind of, are doing something that is really hard work and doesn't offer, the huge returns that perhaps doing things more simply would be, but actually it's doing things properly and sustainably, and perhaps, regeneratively, actually are minded that we should leave behind better than we inherited,
Is that a mission of yours?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big one for badges, I think, I don't know how the US is looking at regenerative farming currently. I do see lots of things, and it scares me a little bit, but I think, I've got very strong sort of family values. I've got 4 children, I've got grandchildren, and I'd like to think that, when I think we've inevitably been swept along with some stuff that we could be laid to blame for, but it'd be quite nice to kind of do everything we can to try and leave behind, better than perhaps we inherited, or even sort of, even as good as we inherited, sort of thing,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm an environmentalist myself. I'm outdoors all the time, really. So just whenever I can clean up a space, leave it better than I visited it. I feel good about it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
if we could get more and more corporations, more large, farmers and corporations in general, the hard work of cleaning up the environment, then that's
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was saying, I mean, so we're proudly, a B corporation. We were the first B Corp cheese making company in the UK to certify 3 years ago, and we did that because using a business as a force for good is what we want to do. We are prepared to write and have written into our articles of association, so basically the business rules by which we comply, that we will treat equally people and planet with profit, and we are held responsible to that. We are monitored. We produce reports that go along with that, and then that takes us into a community of like-minded people, and then that influences that actually when we look to procure something new, then we'll look into the B Corp community and see if there's someone in there, because we know they align with what we're thinking, and so I think this, and the reason I mention it is that I think B Corp does seem as if it is a global community that reaches to both big corporations right the way down to businesses of our size.
You had a really interesting path that brought you to this company. I wonder if you could just share a little bit about your career and how you ended up making cheese in this part of your career.
Yeah, sure. Well, we live in a really nice rural part of the UK in Devon, which is beautiful. And from a very young age, I had sort of an affinity with food, not just eating it, but kind of just doing stuff with it. And that led me into an early career in hospitality, working for a big group of pubs, restaurants, and sort of heading out on a management development scheme. So really sort of trying to turn it into a bit of a career, which was great, and I did that for a few years and got to a really good level, but was working really hard. Felt like I perhaps needed to have a bit more fun, a bit of time out. So I took a time out when I was 20 to 21, and took the opportunity to travel the world, just on a one-way, not on a one-way ticket, on a round-the-world ticket for a year, and being in the world of food and drink allowed me to hop around and do some work along the way. Really enjoy it, experience different cultures and different foods and different people, which was fantastic. And then when I came back, I just wanted to kind of explore other areas of the food industry, if you like, and that's why I ended up joining a manufacturing company for big brands, big brands that you would know, things such as Hellmann's or Napoli, Mazzola, big brands. So this was Best Foods in the UK, called something slightly different, part of Unilever now. And I spent 8 years with them, and had a really good time, working with the food service industry, so people who I knew and could relate to, but working on these big brands, working with some international companies and international customers, and really enjoyed myself, and did some really, really interesting projects. So, for example, at the time, it was when Planet Hollywood were really sort of taking the world by storm, and we formed a partnership with them. We were developing some specific products for them that were to go across Europe, and this is all very exciting stuff. And then I was presented with an opportunity so this is all in the sort of what we would call food service, HoReCa sector. And I had the opportunity to step sideways to deal with the retailers in the UK. The retail market in the UK is about 90% of what people spend their grocery spend on is with the multiple retailers. So I had the opportunity to work for a manufacturer supplying into the multiple retailers, a dairy-based company, and again, sort of managed to kind of work my way to a position where I was working on one particular chain, which is Marks and Spencer. I don't know if you know that. Do you know that in the States? So it's like a premium end, maybe Trader Joe's, but they also have a sort of that sort of level of food. And again had sort of 6-7 years of great times with them, and I was then presented with an opportunity to go and join a small medium-sized business to help the owners to kind of take their business to the next level, And after a lot of deliberation, I kind of thought, well, actually, this might be quite a nice thing to do. Quite a challenge. Take skills from big companies back to small companies. And so I decided to take the leap, and it was great. It was really interesting. I was able to take stuff that I'd learnt that was very maybe more formulaic and more about big brands, and then introduce that to a smaller business, but in a way in which was consumable by them, which sounds a bit strange, but actually there's lots of people who've been in this business for multiple years. It was successful, but there was opportunity to use some of what I knew to kind of get better, but also I learned so much from them as well. Learned about more about people skills and how you take people on the journey and what have you. And so that was really good. And the big as well as the current business experience that I'd had, the big thing that these guys were involved in was exporting. And they were sending containers out to the States and elsewhere every week. And they were really successful at it. So for me, it was a great learning there as well. Our objective was to really market the business over the course of the time I was there and find a buyer. That was the aspirations of the owner. And that's what we managed to do over the course of 5 years. We, in the business world, sort of did some business flirting, we would call it in the UK, with some likely buyers. And then we were acquired. And so I had an opportunity to stay with the combined company. But another opportunity came along to step out and take charge of another SME dairy business as the managing director, as the main person. And I thought, well, actually, that sounds quite a challenge. I had developed quite a good relationship with the owners. I was offered some equity, and so I did that. And that led me to another set of adventures, really. Some good, some bad. The sort of challenging bit was in dealing with the UK's multiple retailers can be tough. We were very reliant on doing white label products for them, and that's a very competitive market, sometimes working at very low margins. That was as much as we launched some brands, and one brand in particular, trying to have be in control of our own destiny. We then sort of succumbed to some listings pressure that meant that actually the viability of the business looked too dependent on certain factors, and actually the site that we were on was extremely valuable for property development. And so a reluctant decision was taken that we should actually manage our way out of the sector, and then the land should be put to a different use, which is my last job. But in the meantime, I'd started to develop a local food supply chain for a huge construction project nearby. At Hinkley Point Power, it's a nuclear power station, the biggest construction site in Europe. They'd announced locally to us that they'd like to use a local food supply chain to supply all of the food and drink for the duration of the build. I tapped into that and thought that I was just going to try and hold them to their word. I got together a bunch of other producers, a butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker, and we took a proposal to the board of the builders of this power station and said, this is what we can do. And they said, great, fantastic. We'd love to use your supply chain for that. We'd also like you to do the cooking, do the food, do the catering. And we said, well, look, guys, that's not our remit. We can knock a sandwich together, but that's not really what we do. And they said, well, look, why don't you just sort of think laterally, think outside the box and come and see what you can do if we wanted to integrate a supply chain with a catering company. What could you do? So we engaged with some people that I knew from another means that had some experience in that area. We pulled together what we thought would be a proposal to be essentially kicked into touch, but we took it to, again, the same people, and they said, look, actually, we quite like what you're doing. What we're trying to do here in this power station is quite unique, in that it's obviously, number one, it's extremely high security, so we need to have a very much a tailor-made approach to anybody who comes on site. We want to make sure that people are well nourished and they feel good about food they're eating, and also we want to invest into the local economy. So actually, if we roll with you, then that gives us all of those things. So Somerset Larder was the company that we formed, and we signed a contract with EDF, ironically the French government, who were building the power station to start supplying provisions and meals for everyone at Hinkley Point.
Well, it's
which is great.
Fascinating. That's
yeah.
An incredible journey that brought you. I mean, you've seen almost at scale some of the largest companies in Europe, right? Largest computers you've worked with, to the smallest of small businesses, and then to put that initiative together, that supply chain together, and then it must have been very rewarding to see this large power plant company that set out with the mission of supporting local business actually come to fruition. Must have been very cool.
Yeah, it was really cool, and I must admit, I doubted a number of times along the way whether this was a true ambition, but it was, and it took a number of different directions along the way, a lot of challenges, but it was great, and it ended up, that I, for reasons I didn't predict, I ended up sort of walking away at a point in 2018, and shortly afterwards, that entity was turned into a for-profit organization and sold to a bigger company, but the principles of what we set up at Somerset Lada still exist. It's been really good. It's really great. We employed over 100 people up to the point that I stepped away, and we were spending like $3 million a year, with local producers. It's great. But that led me to do a few other things. One of which was to get involved with where I am now at Sharpham Dairy, introduced by an intermediary that knew myself and knew the Mark who wanted to retire and sell the business. And so we came together and met. We liked each other. I think as well as wanting to have some funds to retire on, I think it was quite important to Mark and Debbie that they had a legacy that would be collected and respected, and taken long into the future. And so over time, we sort of developed that relationship, and we made them an offer for the business in July 2019 that they accepted, and off we went. Full steam ahead, and had the best Christmas ever. And then on July the 3rd, on March the 13th, Friday the 13th, 2020, Boris Johnson effectively shut down our retail and food service sectors in the UK, and everybody had to stay at home, which was a bit of a shocker for all small businesses, especially ours.
So tell us about that. I mean, that naturally starts the next story, right? Because you bought a business you establish this relationship, take over the business in July 2019, and then March rolls around, and then the world stood still.
Yeah.
So what is that like? When do you have any fingernails left?
People as well. I think it's a real test of leadership. I mean, I'm sure you've talked to a lot of people around at that time, and it is that ultimate. When you talk about the swan gliding along the surface, but underneath the feet are doing an awful lot. And that was for us, because I think it was such a shocker for the world and for all the people around us, and for our staff and for our families. So as much as it really scared us hugely, and we didn't have a lot of the answers, to our team and to the people that most looked to us, we kind of had to keep a fairly straight face, be fairly confident, and say, look, this is going to be all right. We're going to work our way through this. We'll find some ways, but just bear with us while we sort of work it out, And here we were lucky, because within a few weeks, I think 3 weeks of the announcement, we were offered support with a furlough scheme. So employees could effectively be paid a significant amount of their salary to not come to work. So we took up the offer of doing that for a few weeks. We called the family back. So my daughter had come back from university, my wife was down, the former owners were in, and because obviously we couldn't furlough the animals, so we still have milk, and we still have to make cheese, even though we were uncertain as to what the market might need. Our customers shrank from over 50 to 6, and we had a lot of cheese in stock. So we sort of did a number of things. We firstly we decided that the cheese we have made for the forthcoming Easter wouldn't last forever. So we started boxing up these anonymous boxes of cheese and selling them to friends and family. And we created this network of friends and family, that we sold thousands of boxes to for a fixed fee for £10. and nobody had a clue what was inside it, but they knew they were getting a good deal. So we started that scheme. So that started to wear fruit and stock, and we still do that today. Tonight, I've just sent a little WhatsApp text out to the people, the friends and family, and it costs us money now, but it's kind of, there's something in it that we kind of think actually it's things like that that helps us to get over really challenging times. So that was one thing. We then accelerated, despite the fact, that funds weren't easy to come by. We carried on with the rebranding, and we launched our website. So we started to sell online, because one thing, again, in the UK especially, I'm sure it's the same in the States, people started to get bored at home, have money that they couldn't spend, and started to shop online. In the UK, we were classified as a food maker, which is what we are. So we were permitted to work. So we were there making so we were able to set up and start selling online, and we did a number of collaborations with a winery that sat on the same estate as us, local breweries, anyone locally who wanted to collaborate, we did stuff with. We did online tastings, so we would send boxes to dozens of people, and then we'd get up onto the computer like this, and we would talk them through what they've got in their box, and that was good fun to do all over the place. We'd send boxes to Europe, different places, and then the third thing was here, the farm shops, the significant farm shops really came to life, started to get really busy. They were people didn't want to go to a big branded retailer and rub shoulders with people for the risk of infection, for queuing up outside and everything else. So they were going to these open farm shops, and they were our core customers. So that started to really get ahead of steam. So we just really then sort of dug in, and sort of all these things, and just kept our eyes closed at times, and just tried to work our way through it.
It sounds like you were getting very creative with different revenue streams. You're like, all right, let's try this. Let's do this. What like almost like working with what you have. We know we got a lot of cheese. How can we get it moving? So
I think that's true.
You make it through COVID creatively, and it seems like an overarching theme of your career is creativity, right? Like, thinking strategically, working this supply chain, bringing in a caterer, like always, how can I innovate? How can I be creative in my industry? So you make it through COVID. It's 2025. Where's the company stand today? Like, how are you doing?
Yeah, well, one of the big things that we knew when we bought the business is our lease was going to run out at some point on the lovely estate where we were based, and the aspirations for the future on the estate were different to what we met. So therefore we needed to move. So that too was a bit of a rocky road, but we found a brilliant option on a farm with a group of other food and drink producers, which is where we are. So we finished building our new dairy in August of last year, and last Friday, the Friday we'd just gone, we made the cheese for the first time in the new dairy. So we managed to sort of keep continuity going as best as we could as we moved from one dairy to another. We're now in this dairy. It's been a huge leap of faith, huge financial investment, but we've managed to take our full team with us, take our customers with us, and now we've got a bit more space to grow. And we're as well amongst these other producers that allow us to create a hub. It's called the South Devon Food Hub. To create a hub whereby we can actually share ideas, work together, build collaborations, develop products together. So it's a really, sort of fulfilling place to work. And really for us now, we need to fill up this new dairy because it's got it. That's the only way it will kind of pay for the return on investment. But also, it does feel like as we started this conversation, really, that there's a need for more transparency in food production, and literally where we are, you can see the fields, you can see the production, and the plans for the future are that you'll be able to see consumers, all on the same piece of land, which is ultimate transparency, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's funny because you almost lead exactly into my what I like to be sort of my last question, which is what's something you're looking forward to in the next 6 to 12 months, and so tell me more about that. Like what are your plans for next year?
Well, I think, we can actually, we're enjoying it already. It's like, there's been a lot of worrying times in the past, but now with all those little ideas you keep writing down, I mean, you do it, I'm sure I do it all the time, write down, I could do this, I could do that. We're starting to be able to do some of the can-do things as well at the same time as planning longer term, because now actually we've been so much with a sort of a lack of foundation to be able to plan too far ahead. So I think shaping the long-term plan so that we've got that kind of, financial rigor that you have to have in a small business, but then be able to do some of the more sort of creative stuff that we really enjoy, and have some fun doing. And then, I spend quite a bit of time on as well, putting time back into the industry. I chair a group called Food Drink Devon. We have about 370 members in the county of producers and hospitality outlets and retailers. And we have a board of brilliant people that all run this company for nothing. We have some employees, and our aspirations really are to help all of those business work together for a greater good. It sounds all a bit romantic, but ultimately it's never been harder to sort of kind of do business in the food sector, which is a bit crazy because everyone needs to eat. But kind of it's bringing a community together can really throw up some opportunities that otherwise that wouldn't exist.
Yeah. Greg, thank you so much for sharing your story. Like I said, I think like from our pre-call and from this conversation, like your journey has been so just adventurous and interesting, like from your travels around the world to the different varieties of industry that you've worked with and growing your business, taking over, and all the innovations that you've made within your organization. It's really, really a cool story. So I want to thank you again for being a guest here today. It's always a great conversation when you're around.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thanks very much for the opportunity again. And it's great to talk to you too, Alex. It's been really good.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much again.
Cool. All the best. Thank you. Cheers. Right. Bye-bye.